Most people believe wealth comes from complex ideas, cutting-edge technology, or access to exclusive opportunities. But when you step back and observe how money is actually made in the real world, you begin to notice something far more important and far more uncomfortable, which is that extraordinary financial outcomes often come from extremely simple ideas executed at the right moment, in the right context, with the right understanding of human psychology. On this channel, Common Sense Investing, the goal is to look beyond headlines and complexity and understand the deeper forces that actually drive financial success. Because once you understand incentives, attention, and behavior, you begin to see why things that appear trivial on the surface can generate enormous economic value underneath. Consider the example of a family business that started making oversized novelty foam hats, not as a sophisticated technological innovation, but simply as fun party accessories. And yet, when a specific sports moment went viral and players began wearing those hats, demand exploded overnight, generating hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue within weeks, not because the product was technically advanced, but because it captured attention at the exact moment when emotional energy was highest. This reveals one of the most important realities of modern markets, which is that attention itself has become one of the most valuable economic assets in the world. And businesses that understand how to attach themselves to emotional moments, viral trends, or identity signals can create disproportionate financial outcomes from extremely simple products. The same pattern appears in even more abstract examples, such as companies that sell the ability to name a star after someone, which does not involve owning the star, controlling the star, or changing anything in the physical universe, but instead involves selling a story, a symbol, and an emotional experience. And despite the simplicity of the offering, these companies have generated millions in revenue over decades because they are not selling a physical asset, they are selling meaning, and meaning is often more valuable than the underlying object itself. This teaches an important investing lesson, which is that financial value does not come solely from tangible utility, but often from perceived value, emotional resonance, and narrative power, and investors who understand this can better understand why certain companies, assets, or trends grow far beyond what traditional logic would predict. This pattern becomes even clearer in the digital world, where a single YouTube video showing nothing more than a fireplace burning for 10 hours has generated millions of views and significant income, not because it solves a complex technical problem, but because it fulfills a psychological need for comfort, focus, and atmosphere, demonstrating that economic value often emerges from fulfilling emotional and psychological demand rather than purely functional demand. What all of these examples reveal is not randomness, but a deeper principle, which is that markets reward those who understand human behavior more than those who simply understand technical complexity, because markets are ultimately systems of human decision-making driven by attention, emotion, identity, and incentives. This has profound implications for investors because it explains why companies that capture attention can grow faster than companies that build technically superior products, why narratives can drive valuations beyond fundamentals in the short term, and why understanding psychology is as important as understanding financial statements. It also explains why many investors fail, because they focus exclusively on numbers while ignoring the behavioral forces that actually drive demand, adoption, and long-term growth. Even at the individual level, this principle appears in the story of an ordinary shoe salesman who became the top performer in his industry not because he had superior tools or advantages, but because he approached his work with intensity, urgency, and personal ownership, treating every customer interaction as an opportunity to create value, which demonstrates that financial success often comes from mindset and behavior rather than external circumstances. The deeper lesson is that wealth creation is not reserved for those with the most complex ideas, but for those who understand incentives, attention, and human nature, and who position themselves where demand, emotion, and opportunity intersect. For investors, this means learning to observe not just what exists, but why it exists, not just what people say they value, but what their behavior proves they value, because markets ultimately reflect aggregated human behavior, and those who understand that behavior gain a structural advantage over those who focus only on surface-level information. This is why the goal is not to chase hype or predict trends, but to develop the ability to see clearly, think independently, and recognize the underlying forces that quietly drive financial outcomes over time. Because once you understand how attention, psychology, and incentives shape markets, you begin to see opportunities where others see randomness, clarity where others see noise, and long-term advantage where others see only short-term events. And that shift in perspective is one of the most valuable investing advantages you can develop. So if you want to understand what is really happening in markets and how to think about money with clarity and discipline, subscribe and continue building the mindset that allows you to make smarter financial decisions over time.